Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats our boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing Tracker Season 2, Episode 20, which is the season finale. So before I get into the review, I just want to say thank you to everybody who subscribes to my channel, likes my videos, leaves me comments. I appreciate it so much. If you have any comments or discussion questions, you can leave them below. I love interacting with everybody. So getting into this episode, and definitely stay with me till the end of the video because I am going to go over kind of the cliffhangers, the takeaways, and kind of go over character by character and what to expect or what we're looking forward to season 3. So definitely stay with me at the end of the video. So getting into this episode previously on Tracker, where we kind of see what to expect in this episode. They show flashbacks with his brother Russell and the night that his dad died. Because remember, it's kind of always been hovering over his head on what happened that night. He sees his dad get pushed off a cliff and then he sees his brother. So, he always kind of wondered if Russell had something to do with his dad's death. And he's not really in contact with Russell, right? He's kind of a loner, living in his trailer and traveling from town to town, but his brother is kind of disappeared too and doing whatever he needs to do. And we saw him in a couple episodes with Coulter. So they've talked, but I feel like he's always wanted to know what happened to his dad. So they show that flashback, and I feel like in a way he kind of blames Russell for it, even though he doesn't know for sure. So there's a little bit of animosity there, I feel. And then you see Coulter with his sister Dory, and then you see the old box from the last episode, right? This box of his dad's things. Research is what Coulter, called it, maybe notebooks and papers. Maybe he was killed over his research. So Coulter really just wants to go through and kind of see what is all in this box, right? And remember, he found that phone number on that little tiny piece of paper. So that's going to be interesting too. Of course, this was years ago, and we know the number is disconnected, but I feel like he's going to explore that. So the show starts out with you seeing a man being killed, at night in the woods. So you're like, okay, is that the person Coulter's going to be looking for, or what does that have to do with anything, right? And you see Coulter talking to Randy, and of course, he's talking about the phone number. So I was right, he is kind of having them investigate it. So Randy is looking into the phone number. Obviously, it's disconnected, but he finds out it traced back to a scientist who died of suicide the same year his dad died. So is that a coincidence? Does that have anything to do with his dad? And he lived in Hampton, Virginia before California. Randy's still digging, not a lot of information, but definitely interesting. So then he gets a job in Little Fork restaurant, which is back in his hometown. So he sees his mom. His mom makes some pancakes, offers to do his laundry, and Coulter is a little hesitant, but finally agrees, like, hey, let me do this mothery thing for you. And as soon as he said yes, I'm like, the mom's gonna find the box of stuff from his dad, right? I just knew that was gonna come into play at some point, right? Because why else would you put the scene in there that's allowing the mother to go into the trailer to put away the laundry? So we know that's gonna probably play in later on, and it does. And Coulter's mama says her friend Angela runs a restaurant with her brother Bill, and he's missing. And I told Angela, you would help find Bill. So that's the case. So he goes to see Angela at the restaurant, and you find out A couple of days ago, Bill sees this little boy at the restaurant with the man, and he's scared. He's not eating, he's not talking. You could just tell he's afraid of the person he's with, but he's also not going to say anything. So, right away, right, red flags. You see, you're kind of alarmed by that. Like there is something going on. He doesn't want to be with this person. He doesn't look like his dad. Not that he could be adopted or, whatever, but you just kind of don't get a good feeling. You feel like something's not right. Bill tries to talk to him for a minute, gives him a silver dollar, does a little magic trick behind his ear, gives him a slice of pie. He eats like one bite. The man comes back, I didn't pay for this pie, and they leave. So Bill doesn't see the car they leave in or anything, but he starts searching, right? Missing persons. And he finds out that the boy's name is Chris, and the article said he was, lured away. So now we're thinking this guy, what is he doing with this boy? Because now we know that, Chris has been kidnapped. Bill actually hires a PI to try to find out, if they can find out where Chris went. Gets into an argument with his sister Angela because the restaurant's not doing well, and she's kind of mad at Bill for using money for a PI because they don't have the money. And then she doesn't see him for 2 days. So, she's telling all this to Coulter. And, Coulter obviously gets his phone pinged and, finds where his phone pinged into this this field, and actually runs into one of his old friends, Joe, who still lives there, right? And tells him that he thinks it's tied to this guy Yates. And his friend Joe's like, yeah, he's not a good guy, he's involved in a drug operation, drug distribution, like, I wouldn't confront this guy. So Coulter confronts Yates, finds out, the guy's name is Carl Murphy. Now, the guy Yates doesn't know anything about the little boy. So even though he's running this drug distribution, he's not a good guy. He seems genuinely surprised, like he's going around with the kid. Like, I don't have anything to do with that. So Coulter believes him. We don't see Yates again. Doesn't remember when we watch Coulter, he doesn't, arrest or do anything with people that are breaking the law. He's really just going after finding this boy. So you never see Yates again, even though he's doing this terrible drug operation. But he does get the information out of him. So now we're looking for a man named Carl Murphy, and he's the one who kidnapped the kid. We don't know why he has the kid. So obviously, your mind goes towards the worst. You're thinking, sex trafficking, kidnapping, what are they doing with these boys? So Rennie actually, they call Rennie. I love Rennie. She basically finds out that Carl Murphy is an independent truck driver. And since he's independent, he doesn't have to report his loads. And he's also a sex offender. So that like gave me goosebumps. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best profession for a sex offender. He doesn't have to report his loads. He can travel from state to state. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is going to be like a state to state operation, some big sex ring, because he's got the perfect cover, right? I mean, he's a truck driver. He reports to nobody, and he can go in and out each state undetected and take these boys in his truck or in his trailers, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like we have to find this guy because this is a perfect cover and operation for him. They find out his dad died and he has property nearby. So of course Coulter goes to find the property. He doesn't find anybody there, but he does find, like a kid's jacket, and knows that they were there. He finds in a desk drawer Polaroid pictures with names written on them, and one of them is Chris. So we know, Chris was there. We find 12 Polaroids. So this is 12 boys that we know of that was taken. So like I say, how long this has been going on, like they send the pictures, or Coulter sends the pictures to Randy, and he's researching them. And yes, they're all missing boys. So that like I'm like nervous now. I'm like, we have to get this guy because we don't know how long this has been going on. He also finds a little kind of like a wood carving um, on the windowsill. And he picks it up and he sees it on the back and he sees his dad's name. So now I'm like, wait, what? Like, how did his wood carving get into a trailer with somebody running a sex ring, right? Like, how is his dad associated with Carl Murphy? So that's a little suspicious. Um, and then, so we obviously know that he's not working alone. They find the car. Coulter finds Bill shot in the head in the front seat. So, yes, that was Bill that we saw at the beginning of the episode. However, now, we found Bill, like I said, that he's dead, but now we've stumbled on this, this kidnapping ring that we want to explore and find out what's going on. 12 pictures of these boys and nobody's in the cabin. It means that Carl is definitely working with somebody. And what is the end result, right? So they found a receipt. Bobby was able to track it. Bobby and Randy are working together. I love them both. And Coulter was able to find the place that they're holding the boys. He brings his friend Joe. They're able to find Carl Murphy, and he confesses and says that all the kids go to Texas. Now, when they find Carl Murphy, they don't find Chris, but they find two other boys. So obviously, they saved those two boys because they were going to get into a van and take them somewhere. And he says they all go to Texas. So the FBI, obviously they get in contact with the government, right? The police, and the FBI raids this place in Texas and finds 6 kids. Chris being one of the 6 kids. So that's a relief. We actually see the FBI raid them and arrest everybody. So those kids are back with their family, including Chris. However, the numbers don't add up. You found 6 kids in Texas, right? And they found two, where they found Carl. So that's 8. And there was 12 kids in those Polaroids. So, I mean, math was the first thing I did. I was like, okay, so there's still 4 missing kids. So you don't hear, any more about that because obviously this is an episode about Coulter and the episode isn't following this ring, but that was the first thing I thought of was like, oh, I'm so glad the FBI found those boys. I'm so glad they're safe. I'm so glad they're back with their family, including Chris, which is what started the whole thing because Bill saw Chris and knew something wasn't right, and they saved 2 boys too, so that's 8. So I mean, I want them to go further. I mean, they're in Texas, but obviously they're sent somewhere else. So I was hoping Coulter would be like, yes, they found 6 kids, and then they also found that they were sent blah 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 to Mexico or overseas or wherever, and were able to shut down the whole operation, right? Because I'm definitely glad they found the kids, but now I'm worried about the 4 kids that they didn't find, and where they are and what happened to them. So that's the only thing I dislike about this episode is, I wanted to know that all 12 kids were safe. But Shaw goes back and tells Angela, look, Bill died. I found him, but he did a good thing. He saved these kids. He was doing what he thought was right. He knew that little boy Chris was in trouble and he did the right thing, right? So, I mean, he lost his life, but he saved people in the process because he was trying to do the right thing. So he saved those kids and future kids, right? Because we don't know how long this operation's been going on. So Coulter asks Murphy about the little carvings. Obviously, he asks where the kids are, but then he asks this personal question. This was in your trailer. Where did you get it? And he said he got it from his uncle. So what is interesting is in this whole episode, you never know the name of his uncle. It's just, are you Carl Murphy's uncle? So I thought that was interesting that they didn't tell you his name. Is that part of a cliffhanger? Are we going to find that out in the next season? So at any rate, he's going to see Carl Murphy's uncle. That's kind of the end of the show is he wants to question him. Like, how do you know my dad? Carl's linked to the sex offender. Like, obviously we don't think his dad's associated with that at all. We have no indication that he is, but how does all that link together? So meanwhile, while he goes to see his uncle, his mom is putting the laundry in his trailer and she sees the box and she's going through the box. So remember, this is her husband, right? So she knows her husband was in all this research, paranoid, living off the grid. She was there for the whole thing, right? So she's going through all this research, but the scenes of her going through it, there's just something that doesn't sit right with me. Like, I feel like the expression on her face, she doesn't seem happy to look at the research, like she's annoyed that her kids kept this box from her. So I don't know. When I saw her mom going through the box, there was just something that didn't sit right with me. And while Coulter is talking to this man. You recall, Carl Murphy's uncle. Where did you get this carving? And he recognizes him. Oh, you're Coulter's boy. Or I'm sorry, you're Ashton's boy. And so obviously he knew his dad. So now I'm like, let's find out about his dad. And he talked about his dad in his research. And Coulter said, my brother Russell said that somebody else was there that night my dad died. Somebody else was in the woods, and Coulter was like, that was you. And he was like, yes. And he's like, you pushed my dad over the cliff. You killed my dad. He was like, yes. So I'm like shocked. My mouth is dropped. Like, yes, you were there in the woods, but you just admitted to doing it. Why? And I was just shocked. I wasn't expecting him to say that. I thought we were going to go on this, this ride or this treasure hunt of information. But no, he was like, yes. And Coulter's like, are you working for the feds? Was there somebody you wanted his research? And he goes, no, I wasn't working for the government. I wasn't working for the feds. I was just a lineman. And then Coulter was like, well, then why push him? And he says, because she asked for my help, quote unquote, your mother. Because Coulter was like, who's she? And he says, your mother. So, I mean, that just sat with me because she asked for my help and it was your mother. So obviously Coulter has like tears in his eyes now because he wasn't expecting to hear that. So very, very good episode. Being a mother of a little boy, and having a son, that just, that tears me up watching anything of, kidnapping, abduction, sex trafficking, that's just, that's your worst fear. Chris was lured out, how did they, lure him out? We talk to our kids, don't talk to strangers if somebody says this, right? So I feel like that's a parent's worst fear. So watching this episode, I'm glad they caught the culprit. I'm glad, the kids are safe. But again, my first thought as a parent was, okay, you had a picture of 12 boys, 8 were saved. Where's the other 4? Because as a mother, you want to make sure all the children are safe, right? So that was me personally, I think, as a mother saying that. But it was a good episode. I'm glad we found, the people that were doing it and they were arrested and the kids are safe. Oh, obviously, we always want safety for our children. The takeaways from this episode, character by character, just doing with the takeaways. It looks like Bobby and Randy seem to be working well together. I don't know if both of them are coming back from season 3, but it looks like they kind of have a good setup with both of them working together. So I like that. They have their own computers, so maybe together as a team. We saw in this episode, Bobby was kind of working the case and he kind of had Randy working the phone number for his dad. So they were both kind of working different aspects of the case. When Rennie helped out by the background of Carl, she seemed a little off, a little shaken. She wasn't taking calls from Sharf, which is her very shady client. which we saw in the previous episode where she was kidnapped. So I still think he's a shady character. I still don't like him, but she's still shook up. She's still a little shaken. I didn't think that Rennie was really herself. Um, and like I say, you can kind of tell she's not really herself because she's not taking his calls. So even though in the episode, we saw she was okay, she believes him, he was going to sacrifice himself to save her life. Coulter didn't believe it, but she did. She seemed to be okay. Now you're seeing kind of the aftermath of that, and maybe she is still dealing with a lot of that. So, I hope she kind of gets over that and comes back to the great Rennie that we all love and that great personality. Velma has a nice moment with Rennie. I'm here for you, and Velma being the great supportive character she is. So I hope, we see all those characters back next season. And so Coulter's mom. So let's just talk about Coulter's mom. She's going through the boxes and the papers of his dad, of Ashton's box. And you see Coulter kind of crying and thinking at the end of the episode. So let's just talk about that, right? Being a parent, being a mother. I always thought there was something off with Coulter's mom, and I'll tell you why. I obviously did not think that she was involved with his death at all. I will tell you that. I'm not saying I knew that. But the one thing that I thought was odd was um, she when we saw episodes with her with Coulter, she was always like, yeah, you don't need to call Russell, like don't call him back. And I thought that was odd because as a parent or as having siblings myself, my mom always encouraged us siblings to talk and get along and see each other and be happy. Even if we weren't seeing my mom, she wanted us as siblings to get along. So when I think about Coulter's mom, she didn't really see her son Russell, and she never encouraged Coulter to. She actually did the opposite, and she encouraged Coulter to don't talk to him, don't call Russell back. And I just, as a parent, and like I say, in my family, it was just strange. Now, I know every family dynamic is different. I know there's dysfunction. I feel like there's dysfunction in every family, myself included. Or my family included, but I just thought it was odd that, she didn't know where Russell was, and she just didn't encourage them to communicate. And it makes more sense now. She doesn't want Coulter to communicate with Russell because Russell was there. And at that moment when he died, maybe his mom didn't want Coulter to talk to Russell and find things out, right? Now that we know she's involved. So, we knew Coulter's dad was paranoid, and finding out that the mom was involved or that she ordered, this uncle, Carl Murphy's uncle, to kill her husband or push him. I mean, why? What was she involved in? And why would she do it, right? But it does make sense on why she was kind of keeping Russell from a distance. Maybe Russell knew or suspected the mom was involved, and he distance himself from the family, right? Now I want to know, what does Russell know? We've seen him interact a couple times with Coulter, and so we do know that he pops up, and that he's got his own job, right? But I just feel like they don't really talk about the dad. And I think that might be why the mom wanted to distance, like, Coulter, you don't need to talk to Russell. Like, don't call him back. You don't need to have interaction with him. And like I said, as a parent and as, a child that has a mom and has siblings, she always encourages us to communicate and be on good terms. Don't be mad at your brother. Don't be mad at your sister. You guys need to get along. So I just, I guess from my own personal experience, I thought that was odd that she wasn't encouraging it and was actually doing the opposite. But it makes sense now. If she's the villain or she had something to do with, her husband's death and she knew Russell was there, maybe she didn't want to rock that boat. She wanted to keep Coulter separate from Russell because Russell might know something. Because when she's going through the papers in the last couple scenes in the episode, it just doesn't look like she's surprised. She almost looks annoyed and upset that Coulter kept that from her. So the cliffhangers, what I'm expecting we're going to see in season 3, is Coulter going to confront his mom? I assume he will, but in what way? He's going to see his mom because his trailer's parked at his mom's house. But he's crying at the end of the episode, which we have never ever see Coulter cry. As I mean, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, leave it in the comments. But I don't remember ever seeing Coulter cry in the previous episodes. So this is personal. He's finding out that his mom ordered his dad to die, like told this man to push him. So, I mean, what was she involved in? What did she know? Why did she betray her family? Um, is Coulter going to find his sister Dory, find his brother Russell? Are they going to talk it out? Like I said, as siblings, are they going to talk it out? Like what was going on with mom? Did you know mom was involved in dad's dad? Like, is he going to kind of have a sibling meeting, a family meeting with his brother and sister, talk about it? Um, I just think it's odd that as a mom, she kept the sons from communicating. So that was always kind of a red flag to me, but I didn't think it was because she was behind the death. I just thought maybe she thought Russell was behind the death, and I don't know. Maybe she thought Russell was going into another place. I don't know, but I always kind of thought that was odd. But I was not expecting this. Um, as a mother, as a wife, I don't understand how you plot to kill your spouse. I can't even fathom that. So that's hard for me to believe too, but that she's keeping it from her children. And what else does Coulter find out from this man? I mean, you see the scene, he's crying. The man just admitted, I was in the woods. I pushed your dad. Your mom told me to do it. I was helping her. But he doesn't leave. He's still sitting on the sofa. So I'm assuming, obviously they cut end of scene, end of episode, but what else does he find out? Because if I were Coulter Shaw, I'd be sitting there and I'd have a ton more questions. What was it involved in? What were you doing with my mom? What was my mom involved in? So is he going to get a lot more information? And then what is he going to do with that information? Is he going to confront his mom with everything that he knows? Is he going to say nothing? Is he going to, like I say, tell his siblings first? What is he going to do with this information, right? There's just so many questions. If you're going to ask me my opinion, I want season 3 to start out on that sofa with Coulter still talking to Carl Murphy's uncle, because I know he's going to be asking more questions, right? That's the end of the season because they want you to have that cliffhanger. They want you to think about it, but he's got to be asking him more questions. What was my mom involved in? Why did my mom, want your help? How did you help? What happened afterwards? So many questions. And then, like I said, obviously the question after that is, what does Coulter do with all this information? How do you confront your mom after finding that out? I mean, it was such a surprise to me. I was just shocked that it was the mom. Like I said, I knew there was something off with her, but I never suspected this at all. So definitely a great episode. Love the cliffhangers. I hope everybody comes back next season, but I'm very excited to see how they do season 3. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my review, my takeaways, the cliffhangers. If you have any comments, leave them below, and I will see you next time. Bye.